Okay, we're looking at vocabulary, and I started going through these things and explaining exactly where they're at. Um, so my belief when doing vocabulary is that you do things in 5 words or less, because let's face it, all of us sat there, we just copied and copied the rote memorization of the actual definition. We got nothing out of it. So it's my thought pattern that if you can change things into 5 words or less, you actually have to use some cognition, and you have to actually change and actually think about what the actual definition means. So evolution, I came up with change over time. All right, we know things change and evolve over periods of time. So again, these words do not necessarily have to make complete sense, like a sentence or something like that. They have to make sense to you so that you'll remember what that actual word means. All right, so natural selection is survival of the fittest. Charles Darwin is the father of natural selection. Fitness is the ability to survive and reproduce, ability to survive, and that's 6 words. So I put survival and reproduce. All right, variability is just really differences, like variations, differences. All right, inheritability are traits from parents. We know that they're passed down from parent to offspring. Any of those words would be fine, whatever like you prefer. All right, artificial selection, when I put manipulated traits. Why? Because all right, we can breed corgis and we can breed them for certain colors, or we could breed tomatoes down and make them smaller or make them bigger. So we're actually changing things and we're manipulating those traits. All right, adaptations are change for the better. So a lot of times species will adapt and change for what? Both survivability and reproduction. Structural adaptations are changes to actual DNA, so it will actually change and sometimes become a different species. Mimicry is when a species will imitate another species, like birds will they'll how about like a bullfrog when they make their necks go really out? They're trying to, well, actually, that's not a great. Mimicry is actually like when a butterfly has like eyes on it, so it's trying to mimic a different creature for its own survivability and reproduction. Um, Other examples of mimicry are when they're imitating another animal. All right, camouflage is hidden for protection. And I put blends. You could put blends into the environment. You could put, hidden from eyes or view, or I don't know. But that's what camouflage is, when an animal camouflages. All right, physiological adaptations are changes in the appearance. So it's going to be physiological. So you see like a color change or something. We could actually have horns, and that's a physiological adaptation, would be the bullfrog in the net. All right, fossil record is a record of like all life on Earth. Okay, what are they? Just fossils that we found from the beginning of time. Homologous structures we know are similar structures, but have from different species. So we looked at the wing of a bat and the fin of a whale and the arm of a human. We looked at some of those structures in class. And we determined they have some of the same things. They have a humerus, they have a radius and ulna, they have carpals and phalanges. All right, analogous structures are similar structures within the same species or similar species. Like if we're comparing ourselves to apes, or even within the own human body itself. All right, vestigial structures are no longer used by the species. So there's things that we have that we don't need. So we talked about some of those in class, that we may or may not need an appendix. We don't need a tailbone. I don't know if we need wisdom teeth anymore. So some of these things that we don't no longer need as a species, and that's just example for humans, but other species have their own this. All right, embryology is the study of embryos of various species. So we looked at those similar species, and at the very beginning, we determined that you can't really tell, like in the first 2 to 3 weeks of conception, because all of them kind of look like a little U-shaped, I don't know, I don't know. But then throughout the various stages of the embryo develops, we can see differences start to appear. All right, biochemistry is the chemical makeup of organisms. Genotype we've learned since earlier here, and that's my dog. genetic makeup of an organism. And then we have phenotype, which is the expression of a gene. And I put blonde hair. So we remember those things that we learned earlier. Now you can put whatever you want. Again, what's going to help you remember what genotype and phenotype is? These are the terms you're going to probably have to know for other science classes later on as well. All right, gene pool are genes within a species. All right, so within our species, we have a certain amount of genes, and that's the pool of genes we can blend with. All right, genetic drift. Well, that's genes migrating to different environments. All right, so sometimes we catch rides with the wind or the rain, or sometimes, like in the case of the dodo birds. And I went to the island of Mauritius when I was fairly young, where the dodo birds died out. And the reason why is the humans brought dogs, and dogs went and killed off all their eggs, and then killed off all the dodo birds since they were defenseless. All right. So sometimes, things happen. All right. So the founder effect is like the initial population to a new environment. So we're traveling on that ship, and we got a bunch of stuff on our shoes, and we got chickens, and we got all sorts of things. So we live on this island, and we bring them to this island, and we introduce a new population to that island. So that's called the founder effect. So all of a sudden something comes off my shoe and it starts to grow a tree, and the tree never would have normally been there, but now there's going to be a population of trees in the future that is called the founder effect. Bottleneck effect is almost the opposite, because now we've been living on the island and a hurricane destroys half of us. Well, it means that we're left with very few genes left on the island. So for breeding purposes, the genetic pool becomes very small. So like a bottleneck, again, it like goes small and then eventually will start branching out. All right, an allele is the expression of a gene. We have something called allele frequencies, where how often the gene gets expressed themselves, all right, within the population. And then the three things that we looked at in the movie, which you guys were not paying attention to, which will be on the test next week, is stabilizing selection, directional selection, and disruptive selection. All right, so stabilizing selection is where we talked about that, and I showed you that with babies being born, if you have it too small, they're jaundiced, they have problems. It's not really good and healthy for the baby. If they're too big, it's unhealthy for the mother, because a lot of times they have to have C-sections. And remember, a lot of years ago, they didn't have that ability, so the mother died from childbirth. So medium is usually best. So that's called stabilizing, like in the middle, stable. All right, directional, and I put medium is best in the population. All right, directional selection moves from one extreme to the other. We're going to go from big to small, small to big, black to white, white to black, from totally different extremes. And all right, now we move only in really one direction. All right, so those were the moths that we looked at in the film clip that we saw, where in the population, the white moths thrived, and the dark moths got eaten by all the birds. And then all of a sudden the Industrial Revolution happened, and smoke went all over the buildings. And then all of a sudden the white moths appeared to the birds a lot more visually, and so they actually became eaten, and the black moths survived and thrived. All right, that's directional, so it moves from one extreme. And disruptive selection is when both extremes are best. So it's like a long or short is better. All right, so let's say with giraffes, if they have really short necks, they could get bushes, and they could, lean down and get food that's closer to the ground. And if you have tall necks, then you could actually, get the top of the trees and have more food. But like in the middle, it's no good. Now, I know that's actually, it works with directional selection, but I was just giving you an example of what disruptive. It's disruptive to the natural part of the species evolution. All right, I hope you found this helpful. As always, have a wonderful evening.